We are grateful for the sponsorship and generosity of our client and longtime supporter of the school, Trustmark and the Trustmark Foundation. Trustmark provides access to a full spectrum of flexible benefit solutions, including health plan administration for self-funded employer groups, payroll-deducted voluntary products, group medical benefits, and health and fitness management programs. We are able to bring this webinar to you today on a complimentary basis as a result of Trustmark's support. Now, before we move into today's program, I'd like to take a moment to go over how we will interact today. During the program, you will be invited to participate in a poll as well as to respond using emoticons. The polls will just pop up on your screen. They're pretty self-explanatory. The emoticons can be found down here. So if you look on your screen, you should see a raised hand, a check mark, an X, and some other emoticons. When our presenter today asks you to raise a hand, that's where you'll find the little emoticon. If you have questions or comments during the program, please submit those through the chat feature. That can be found right down here. And when you are chatting, please be sure to use the drop-down. There's a little drop-down in this little section at the end. Make sure it says all panelists before submitting. That way we'll all be able to read your questions and comments. We will be taking comments and questions at the end of the program, although during the program, our presenter today will be asking for your input using that feature. Please take a moment to be sure that you are muted and that your video is off for the entire program. That will help us avoid any unnecessary distractions during the program. Okay, let's give this a little test. So once you've closed your other applications and are ready to start, click the raised hand emoticon. So just go ahead and find that little space. I see some hands popping up. Very good. Thank you for all that. All right, so it looks like we are good to go. So I would like to introduce to you today, before we get started, our presenter, Deborah Skolaris. Deborah has 15 years experience as a certified career coach and leadership development professional. She is currently providing services as a career coach at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management, where she coaches current students and alumni on all aspects of career development. Deborah holds a bachelor's degree in public relations and a master's degree in business management from Ball State University. She has been certified by the Coaches Training Institute, the Institute for Excellence in Coaching, and the International Coach Federation. She is a consultant to the Institute for Coaching and a published writer. So without further ado, we bring you Deborah Skolaris and today's program, Career Fitness Challenge 2015.
Thank you so much, Carol, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very excited to have the opportunity to speak with you today about career development. What I invite all of you to do throughout our time together is to really think about what career development you would like to see for your career for 2015. It's hard to believe, but we're almost at the end of January, so about 3 weeks into the new year. Think about where you are today and where you'd like to be December 31st, 2015. Throughout the session today, I'll help you start to see the benefits of career development, not only for this year, but really for the entire course of your career. So let's get started. There is a quote, and I believe it was just up. It was a quote by Thomas Edison, and it talked about being really having the genius. Carol, if you could go back to that quote. Yeah, thank you. The genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. The reason why I like this quote so much is because it talks about how it's really important to be inspired, and with a capital A-N-D, we need to do the work. And career development really is all about doing some work, literally every day, to move yourself forward. So today, I'd like to invite you to take the Career Fitness Challenge for 2015 as part of your New Year's resolution. I'll walk you through some of the steps and show you how successfully to complete the challenge this year and again, even beyond this year. So as I thought about the title of our program today, the Career Fitness Challenge, I started to think about similarities between professional athletes and managers or employees in corporations. And I thought professional athletes train really hard to bring their best self to their sport. So what if we did the same thing as a way of winning really big at work every day? And then I thought, what do Olympic gold medalist Michael Phelps and Fortune 500 company CEOs have in common? And first, I thought not anything at all. And then I thought, if I take a closer look, there are some similarities in the fact that it's really fiercely competitive, it's mentally and physically demanding, and it requires constant preparation in order for us to succeed. So I think there definitely are some similarities in both of those arenas. So today, the agenda that we have is going to be looking at a career development theory, the role of a self-assessment in career development, setting career goals, understanding and communicating your brand, and building a plan for success. And since we're at the beginning of the new year, many of you probably made some New Year's resolutions around your career. And so I'm curious about what some of those resolutions are. And so if I could ask you to chat in and make sure you send all the responses to all panelists, but let us know what were some of your New Year's resolutions around your career. And I'll give you just a little while to chat in and answer that question. And again, it's what New Year's resolutions did you set for your career this year?
And again, please, when you're chatting in, remember to select all panelists when you send in your answers so that we can all see what you're responding.
Great, and there's some really great ones coming in. Increased visibility at executive level, really great. Exploring some new career paths, identifying goals, these are all really great. Get a new job, change my role, very good. Great. Okay, so wow, lots of great New Year's career resolutions, really great. Some leadership development there, better networking, wonderful. Okay, well, thank you all for chatting in on that. There actually is a Forbes list of top 10 career resolutions, and here they are on this next slide. And if you'll notice, all of these New Year's resolutions, except for number 4, are around career development. So the idea is that it's really easy to forget about these, right? We make them in the beginning of the year, we maybe put them on a piece of paper, and then they go away. And again, from the chat, where everybody chatted in, there's some really great New Year's resolutions out there. So my challenge to all of you today is to begin thinking about this on a regular basis. Just like a marathon runner trains every day, we really need to work on our career development every day. And back in '03, I actually ran a marathon, so I could definitely speak to that, but it does take serious training every single day. And again, I think in order to develop a career that you like and enjoy and can do for the long haul is something that needs to be worked on every day. So the first part that I'd like to begin with here is to look at the Super's career development theory. And the reason why I started out with this theory is because I do think it's very important to look at your career as something that improves your quality of life and not just a job or something that you go to from 9 to 5 or longer, because I think we're all working a lot more than the 40-hour work week. So I wanted to bring this in to allow you to take a look at it in the spectrum of your entire life, not just the amount of hours you put every day in your position. So Donald Super devised this developmental stage theory, and it involves our personal growth, our skills, and general development towards work. So what I really like about this model that I think is really unique is that it looks at our interaction over a lifetime that could help us develop and decide on what we want to do for a career. A lot of models around career process and career development look at personality profiles, and I'm sure many of you have either taken or heard of the DISC or Myers-Briggs. That basically looks at just our personality, and really this model looks at the whole person. And that's what I think is important to do, and I'll give you some other steps along the way here to help you distinguish what it is that's going to be really great for you in all different stages of your life. So I think that this theory, again, is valuable because it speaks to interests, values, and beliefs. And the theory also realizes that those things, our interests, our values, and our beliefs, they don't remain stagnant. They definitely change. If we're growing and learning, hopefully they are changing. So I'll walk us through a little bit of this. I won't get too detailed. So the first step is the growth stage. And as you can see, it's the 7 to 14 age range. And during this time, we really do begin to develop a self-concept based on factors of our mental ability, our physical ability, our roles in our family, our different relationships and peers. And believe it or not, we do start to develop attitudes and beliefs about our world of work during this stage. And the interesting part about this is in this stage, as we're developing, as we get older, we can actually reach back into those attitudes and beliefs to help us decide what is the best career for us or the best career development for us. So the next stage is the exploratory stage. This is around, like you can see, 14 to 25, and we start to get a little more clear on different occupations, and we start to think of ourselves and maybe envision ourselves in some different careers. We get aware in this stage of things like prestige, level of income, and how our interests and values fit with some different professions. And here we do kind of start to dip our toes into some maybe different aspects and different careers. And then the next stage is the establishment stage, which is the 25 to 45. And this is where we really start to select positions that hopefully will work for us. We try to see what's a good fit. And what happens in this particular stage is really we start to identify our self-concept with our job. So know that that's where that all starts to fit in, and we really start to decide, hey, is this a good fit, or should we start looking for alternatives? And then in that maintenance stage, which is the 45 to 65 range, most of us have settled upon a job or industry that fits for the time being. And hopefully in this stage, we develop skills and interests as we advance in our lives and in our career. I think the most important thing out of this particular area in this 45 to 65-year-old age, according to this theory, is that many of us and many people really grow dissatisfied in this stage. And so it's really important to continue to do that growing and learning so that we can kind of nip that in the bud of being unsatisfied for a long period of time. So the final stage, as you can see, is that stage of disengagement where we're starting to not think about work so much. And of course, it's a little bit different. This particular model was made or created in 1980, so it is a little different today. And most of us aren't retiring early anymore. And the idea is to really find a career which you don't want to retire from, something that you love so much that you want to really stay with for the rest of your working days. And so having looked at that, again, just reiterating, I wanted to take a look at this so you start to begin to look at your career as a whole embodiment of really your whole life, not just the job. So if I could ask you to raise your hand, how many of you see yourself sitting on this chart somewhere? Oh, good. Some hands are going up. Great. All right. So again, think about it in the realm too. This chart is a little bit, like I said, older. So sometimes we might not fit into that range, or those ages might not be exactly where you are today. A lot of people are having children later in life, and so the maintenance and the decline might be a little different. So don't worry if you're not exactly fitting into this model. Again, it's kind of like running that marathon. It's really important for you to find your own formula that works for you. So the process goes, once we identify where we are in life, on this life rainbow, and make a decision that it's time to develop our career, what's next? So the first step is this personal assessment. So let's look at how we do that. Just like an athlete would go to get a physical, right, before he starts exercising, we need to do a personal assessment to get mentally prepared for career development. And these are 4 bullet points that I think are important in order to get that preparation. Examining your personal experiences, knowing your skills, talents, and abilities, and know what motivates you, and then know your values. I'm going to go and give you a little bit more, some examples in each of these areas. So the first piece is examine your personal experiences. So in order to do this, you can ask yourself questions like, what do you do in your spare time? Who do you spend the most time with? Describe some events that you did, or things that you experienced that you felt you were really growing in. And also think about things like, what were some difficult decisions you made, or where do you feel really stressed? So once you do that, one thing that I recommend too when you're thinking about all of these 4 bullet points is to write these things down and don't just have them spinning around in our head. When we write them down, we can then start to develop a full plan, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So the next one is to know your skills, talents, and abilities. So what you can do when you're thinking about your skills, talents, and abilities, one of the things I notice the most when I'm coaching people, I can ask that, well, I can see on their resume that they have an amazing group of skills, talents, and abilities, but when I ask them to articulate them, it becomes something that's somewhat challenging. So again, something that you can do, there are 3 questions you can actually ask yourself around this, trying to articulate your skills, talents, and abilities. 1 is, what do I love about my career? 2 is, where do I lose track of time? And 3 is, what are my greatest strengths? So if you look at that first question I asked, what do I love about my career? An easy way to do that is take out your resume and just circle all the things that you love on your resume. What do you love doing? And then on the opposite end of that, also look at the things you don't like doing and put those in the list as well, so that when you're developing your career, you don't go to those particular things, you go more towards the things that you feel good at and really like to do. The next question I mentioned was, where do I lose track of time? So think about what hobbies and activities or tasks occupy all of your attention, so much that you can get into them and look at the clock and 4 hours have gone away. So these all could be aspects about things that you could put into your current job or growth development. A lot of times people will think, oh, you know, I love to run or do art. How does that coincide with something I want to do at work? And so that's something to start to peel away and figure out, well, how do I do that? Are there some aspects that you could put into your work world? So start noticing those moments of where you really lose time. And then that last question I asked was, what are my greatest strengths? So take some moment for self-reflection. I think this is a difficult task in a world that is always moving. Take some time to really think, what are your greatest strengths? One of the greatest ways or easiest ways to do this, which might be a little bit scary for some of us, but if you're feeling brave, a great way to find out what your strengths are to ask people that are in your life, your friends, your family, maybe even some coworkers, people that you really value their opinion, and get some feedback. And you'll definitely hear some responses that maybe you didn't think of. So the idea behind this is to take a look at all this information you've put together and think about what themes that you see within all of these things that you've put together and what trends do you notice. Maybe you found an eye for detail, you know, a crazy clean desk, and there's an ability to make people feel comfortable and motivated, which means maybe you're destined for some company leadership, or that you love fashion, or articulate long emails and a witty sense of humor, exploring the blogging world. So that's the idea behind really knowing the skills, talents, and abilities. That next bullet point is to know what motivates you. There are several things that can motivate us intrinsically, meaning things that we learn, some things that we overcome, some challenges that we've had. There's also this idea of helping other people motivates us or makes us feel good. And then also receiving recognition is another area where people are motivated by, and they like to have things that they've accomplished on a regular basis. And then also know there's those extrinsic rewards, such as money. A lot of people are rewarded by those things that are on the outside as well. And the last bullet point on this screen is to know what you value. So this is something that is really the foundation of career development. If you aren't sure about what you value, or if you know your list of values but you're not living in your values on a daily basis, this is where life can become somewhat, frankly, miserable at times. So a lot of times we can articulate our passions or what we love regarding our career, or I'm sorry, we can't necessarily articulate them. And so a lot of people will ask, well, what's your passion or what makes you happy? And sometimes that's a little challenging for us to come up with. So there was actually a Harvard Business Review back in April of 2013 that talked about you can begin by choosing a career and developing a career that fits well with your values as long as you know them. So your values are those things that you believe are important in the way you live and work. So they should really determine your priorities, and deep down they probably measure, or they probably are a good measure, of a way to tell if your life is really running smoothly. When the things that you do on a daily basis aren't matching your values, life is not very satisfying. And so the idea is, how do you get those aligned? The idea is that values help us in the realm of making us or allowing us to see what our potential is. And the idea is that values really exist whether we write them down or not. But if we know them, life can really be a lot easier. And then when you make plans and decisions that honor your values, it definitely brings more sense of satisfaction and happiness. So, for example, what I mean by this is if you value family and most of my clients, that's one of their top values. But if they're working 70-hour work weeks and they're not spending time with their family for a long period of time, that creates a lot of internal stress, a lot of internal conflict, and then it creates unhappiness, and we really pinpoint it to our career when in reality it's just that we're not necessarily living our values. The other thing is, another example would be if you don't value competition and you're working in a highly competitive sales environment, most likely you're going to end up not being very satisfied. So in these types of situations, understanding your value can really help. When you know your value, you can really use them to make decisions about your career and, frankly, about your life in general. So some questions that you can answer once you know your values are things like, what jobs should I pursue? Should I accept a promotion? Should I start my own business? Things like, should I compromise or be firm with a particular position? Should I follow some tradition or travel down some new path? This idea of values, like I said, is a real foundation for what I do in helping people develop their careers. So I have a worksheet that we'll be sending out after the session today, and I will invite you to go through that and sit with it as long as you can. It's one of those things that I recommend looking at and then coming back to after you've taken that first look at it, and literally give yourself some time to fill it out and be as clear and concise as possible. So something I noticed is that once we get this personal assessment, or when we're trying to do this personal assessment and we're writing things down and we're trying to develop what's great in our life and our values, I noticed something that happens, and that is that we do a lot of self-sabotaging, and we're not really clear. And so the next slide shows this beware of self-sabotaging. And something I think we all know for sure is that there's no way an Olympic athlete can say negative things to himself all day long and expect to win. Same thing goes for our career development. If we're constantly saying negative things to ourselves, we won't develop, or sometimes we actually start going backwards. So there actually was a study that the Huffington Post did back in November last year, and they showed that through this research, 50% of female managers and 31% of male managers self-sabotage on a regular basis, which really hindered their career development and success. So know that there are these roadblocks that will come up, and a lot of times the roadblocks are within what we're telling ourselves and the different habits that we've formed over the years. And one thing I always say is that it's 21 days to change a habit and 90 days to get it in your bones. So that means to change a habit and to somewhat start to shift this self-sabotaging language or habits that we're doing or action, is that we have to do it for a long time. And it goes back to what I said in the beginning, this idea of this type of work or this type of activity of changing and developing our careers does take a lot of work. So oftentimes we do the self-sabotaging out of fear. When moving forward requires changing or growing or making a difference, sometimes it's quite frightening and we're not really sure what to do, so we'll start sabotaging ourselves and giving ourselves all kinds of reasons why we can't do it. So the idea also to remember is that self-sabotage, it's not a one-time event. It literally is a cycle that continues to repeat over and over again. And so unless someone says, hey, do you notice that there's a habit going on here, or you're able to kind of self-diagnose that you're continually going through this cycle, career development becomes somewhat challenging, and sometimes we're not even sure why. And a lot of times it comes back to this self-sabotaging. So things to think about around the self-sabotaging. It really is, again, around this idea of change. So think about what changes do you wish to occur in your life. And again, we'll equate it to our career and career development. And then think about what fears surface around some type of career change or career development that you'd like to have. And then also think about blocks that come up. And those blocks that come up, well, what are they stopping you from doing? And so I have another question for the group, and I know this might be a little awkward to answer it in a group, but I'll ask it, and it's around that whole idea of feeling or of doing actually that self-sabotage. So I'm wondering how many of you actually self-sabotage yourself, or you know someone who does a lot of self-sabotaging. If you could do the raise of the hand just so I can see how many of you feel that way sometimes, or you know somebody who does a lot of self-sabotaging. Okay, I see some hands going up on that for sure. So The idea is here again, how do we break the habit? Because self-sabotaging is a habit, and it's a learned habit, and most of us who have been out in the work world for a long time struggle with changing our daily habits. And so some action steps you can take around this is to identify a desired change, and again, thinking of something in your career, identify what fear comes up with it, and then identify how you're self-sabotaging yourself. And then that final step is going to be to change the language that you use with yourself on a regular basis. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we continue with the program here. So I have another question for all of you, and if you could chat in, and again, make sure it's for all participants. I have a question for you, thinking about the way we talk to ourselves and what that might transpire for each of us. I'd like to ask a question: who said, "I am the greatest"? I said that even before I knew I was. Anybody have any idea who might have said that? Okay, great. Okay, that's excellent. So all of you, except for the one person said it and they have no idea. I love the honesty. All of you are absolutely correct in the fact that it was Muhammad Ali. And so the idea is, thank you everybody for chiming in on that. That's great. The idea is that, you know, when he started out, he wasn't the greatest, right? For those of us who know the story here. The idea is, though, obviously he practiced, and it's a combination of doing the work and doing the physical ability, but it's also the process of what he's saying to himself. And the fact that we're even saying, I even found this as a quote, that I am the greatest, how long this quote has been around, and again, how successful he was. That's the invite that I want to give all of you, is to really start to think about how you're speaking to yourself every day and what's coming up as a fear and self-sabotaging, and start to shift that around. So the next step that we have is this whole idea, and someone mentioned it earlier, is about the goal setting. And so the idea here is, I titled this slide, Take Steps to Advance Your Career That Really Make You Come Alive. And the reason why I said that is because, again, I want to invite you and challenge you not just to think about it as a ho-hum, oh, I have to develop my career or change my career, to start to think about that person who's hanging off of that cliff right there, about how do you do something and create something in your career that really makes you come alive. So again, if you can all raise your hands and just let me know, how many of you set career development goals yearly? Just curious as to how many of you do that. Okay, some do. Great. Okay, so thank you for that. Some of us do, and I will invite all of you to do that, especially after we get off our call today, to really sit with that, since we're just in the beginning of the year. This is a great time to do this. So just to review these bullet points, the first one is to express your goals positively, then be precise in setting dates and times to achieve your goals, set realistic goals, start every day prepared and engaged, be committed, and then the last bullet point is to write your goals down. What I'd like to do is just review a little bit in more detail about a few of these bullet points. That first one, express your goals positively. Of course, you all know how to write down goals. We've heard about goals probably for most of our career, or even before we started working. Goals have been out there for a long time. And I'm sure most of you know this idea of SMART goals, meaning that they are specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and time-bound. You can use that same formula, the SMART goals, for career goal setting. And, oh, I'm sorry, I just lost the sheet here. Am I still okay?
Yes, we can still hear you, Deborah.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so the idea is that to think about expressing your goals positively, take a closer look at how you are actually saying your goals. And what I mean by that is to look to see if your written out goals have any of the following words: no, not, never, stop, lose, reduce, limit, or quit. If your goals have any of those negative words, they really play an important role in the way we are able to achieve our goal. So think about this idea that words are really powerful. to really focus our attention in one area while we might be missing some possibilities someplace else. So when we use negative words like those ones I had just mentioned, the results sometimes are negative and we can't even figure out why they were negative. And the reason being is because we had used those more negative words. So for an example, some people might have as a New Year's resolution or a goal to stop eating chocolate. So they'll write down, you know, stop eating chocolate. So what you're really doing with having those words, stop eating chocolate, is you're focusing your attention on the very thing that you want to avoid, and that is chocolate. So if going without something you want, when it's always on your mind or where it's easily obtainable, that doesn't necessarily work. The idea is we know basically that out of sight, out of mind, and out of reach usually works a lot better. So the other piece about thinking about expressing the goals more positively is to make sure that you don't have your goals set you up for failure. And what I mean by that is framing your goals in that negative term somewhat creates that all or nothing situation. So even if you slip a small bit, say you don't get up to exercise or you don't learn that new skill, take that one step to learn that new skill any one particular day, we know that what happens in that scenario is that we all decide to go down a path where it's almost like the path of no return. Well, I've already blown it, you know, I might as well enjoy it and start all over tomorrow. And usually what happens in that sense is that tomorrow turns into next week or next month or next year, and we start to get out of control. So the idea is when you're thinking about career development and you're really wanting to do some powerful goals, think about writing them down in positive manners and leaving out that negative speak around them. Makes it a lot easier to achieve. The other piece, these other pieces are things that, again, I'm sure that most of you do on a regular basis, or I should say maybe not on a regular basis, but I invite you to start to do them. You know, be precise in setting dates and times. And on that, you know, if you hit dates and times and you haven't met the goal that you wanted, revamp it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give it up or, again, self-sabotage or do things that are going to make you not meet that goal at some point. Remember, this is a great place to be because it's the beginning of the year to start to do that. So revamp and look at your goals, definitely at least on a monthly basis, but I'll invite you to even do it on a weekly basis. Set realistic goals. Start every day prepared and engaged. I think that the idea is that you really want to be engaged in every step of the way. And if you're starting to feel disconnected, stop and ask yourself why. What's going on in that particular day or at that particular juncture that you're starting to really feel disengaged? Because if days on end go where you're feeling disengaged, again, that's where we start to really become, frankly, disengaged from our career. And then we don't develop and we start to go down a path that doesn't bring us that satisfaction. Stay committed to your goals. And then that last piece there is to write your goals down. There are actually studies out that show there is a huge connection between our mind and our veins and blood that go down to our hands. So I know you probably see this a lot about writing your goals down. I really invite you to do this as opposed to typing them, because we're all frantic typers. This makes us slow down and think about what it is that we really want and what we're really going to try to achieve this year. So I do have a poll question, and Carol, I think I'm going to throw that back for you, to you on this.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open a poll that Deborah has put together, and it's about writing down your goals. It should be open. You should be able to see it. So on the poll, there are 3 options there. Just take your best guess and click on one of those answers. And as you click, I'll be able to see what the responses are looking like. So I see many people are clicking in. Thank you very much. We're getting a lot of great feedback here. We'll leave the poll open for another few seconds, so please go ahead and click in. And we're just about finished here. A few more clicks. Okay, finish up your clicking. I'm going to be closing the poll, and then as soon as it's processed through, I'll go ahead and publish that for everybody to see the results. So thank you for clicking in. And Deborah, I'm going to throw this back to you, and in about 10 seconds or so, I will publish the results of this poll.
Okay, great, great. Okay, So we'll get back to that, and I'll just finish up that idea about what the importance is of writing down your goals, but I can't honestly reiterate that enough, that it is really, really important to write them down as opposed to typing them. And again, keeping them somewhere that is where you can see them on a regular basis. So as I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that many people had the 86% as their answer there, and actually the actual answer to that poll, it is 42%. So thank you everybody for chiming in on that and participating. And so like I said, the answer is really, it's 42%. They're 42% more likely to achieve their goals. But I like the thought. I do like the thought that it could be 86%. I think that's good. So the next thing around goals is this idea of the do's and don'ts. So the idea on the do side is to create goals that really leverage your skills. Again, I go back to what I had said earlier about knowing your skills and being able to articulate them. I think that here, if we are able to articulate them and kind of get them in our bones, it does help us to move our career forward. And if we can get to that point where, again, they're in our bones and we really believe it, a lot of times I'll work with clients and I'll say, hey, these skills are on your resume, and or these skills are things you've done in the past, and for whatever reason, they're not really believing that they could do it. So there's a little bit of lack of confidence there. So being able to really leverage your existing goals to help you and your organization move forward is important. This next one, share your goals with others, is just as important. I'll kind of equate that to that thought of writing them down. Speaking things out loud, I'm a big fan. I always say we speak things into being. So the more you can say those goals out loud, the more it reiterates things that you really want to accomplish, especially around our careers. So ask for support. Share and then ask for support and encouragement when you need it, and find those people that you respect their opinions on, and make sure that you have those people rallied around you on a continual basis. And then create milestones along the way. As I had mentioned before, if you feel like you go back and you didn't meet a goal, don't get discouraged. Just keep plodding forward and know that you can recreate it along the way. But do create those milestones. I think that they really help, and they help you celebrate. I am a big proponent of celebrating wins. So every time you get even the smallest of wins in your career, definitely do a little celebrating. And everybody celebrates in different ways, and you can even write down your top 3 ways of how you want to celebrate when you hit your goals. And doing that again throughout the year keeps you moving forward, and that really is the whole idea behind career development. It's continuously moving forward. On the other side of this are the don'ts. So don't become overwhelmed by a long list of goals. Like here it says, no more than 3 at a time, and that may not sound like a lot. The idea is, though, we end up getting this huge laundry list of things when we're thinking of all the things we'd like to accomplish, and when we don't accomplish them, it almost gets depressing. So keep it to 3, no more than, I would say, 5, and again, make sure that you're checking in on those things on a regular basis. Set yourself up, don't set yourself up to fail. Create those goals that you think are reasonably achievable. And then that last one, don't beat yourself up. It goes back to that idea of the self-sabotaging. Make sure that you are aware when you're doing it, and then, frankly, to be direct about it, stop it. Make sure that you are able to notice, when you're beating yourself up, and then take a break. Give yourself a break and cut yourself some slack, and know that as long as you're moving forward towards your goals, that's the idea, that you're going to continue to do that. So the idea is that we want to continue to have a greater level of expectations this year. So what I invite you to do is to look for opportunities that enhance your goals, both personally and professionally. The idea, too, this year, something that was in the Wall Street Journal, is this whole idea of self-directed career development. So it's really something to think about. There was an article back on January 15th about this self-directed career development. And it really is around this idea of how you set your goals, how do I make myself better, how do I make myself available for promotion. The article stated that it's really up to us and learning how to develop our skills and competencies. So the advantage of this, of really developing ourselves, which I think is great, is that you don't necessarily have to wait around for performance reviews. You can really take charge of your career. And I think that that is, again, one of the really important things about career development is know that even though you might feel out of control sometimes, you really do have control of your career. So the last piece that I want to talk about on the career goals is just to give you some ideas of some career goals if you didn't set some up for this year. But here are some that you can take a look at. Earn a promotion, nurture your network. Can't talk about that more. That one, or enough, that one is very important to career development. Keep your resume and online profile always updated. One thing that I can say for sure is people who come and I talk to them about career coaching, I always reiterate how important it is to keep up your network and keep up your online presence, and that is one of the things that really falls by the wayside a lot. So I will invite you to do that, you know, every 3 months, every 6 months for sure. And like I'd mentioned, this idea of committing to build a new skill every year, I think is a great goal. The idea of work-life balance, getting more organized, and the last two, really play and enjoy the ride, and look at this as something that you're really going to set up so that you can create a better quality of life for yourself. And so as we start to dive into the end of our presentation, the last thing that I really want to talk about is this personal branding. So everybody's heard of personal branding before, I'm sure, and there are actually classes that the school offers around personal branding. This topic can be a topic for a all-day seminar, frankly, and so I wanted to touch on it, though, because I think that it is very important to career development. So the idea is, you know, the question, what is personal branding? And according to Forbes, actually, I really loved what this article said. It said that personal branding is a leadership requirement, not a self-promotion campaign. And I love that because it is. It's all about becoming a leader, right? And that's how we develop our careers. The better we lead, the better development we have, and hopefully the better quality of life in our positions we can develop. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the whole personal branding is all about. So to break it down as simple as possible, really I think the good news is that all of us, we already have a brand. Our brand really is our reputation, right? A lot of us have been out in the workforce for a while, so it's the reputation that we have. It's the things that we're known for. And it's also, frankly, the things that other people can count on you to deliver. So that really is your brand. It's your unique set of qualifications, your strengths, your personal attributes, your values, those passions that we talked about earlier, and they represent what you are all about, and those are the things that you want to make sure are out and showing to your target audience at all times, whether you're looking for a promotion or shifting jobs in that career development realm. So the idea is that the personal branding, it really isn't about choice now, it really is a requirement. So if you can believe it, actually, personal branding was coined back in 1997 by Tom Peters. He wrote an article in called "The Brand Called You" in the magazine Fast Company, and here's what he had to say. You're every bit as much as a brand as Nike, Coke, Pepsi, or the Body Shop. To start thinking like your own favorite brand manager, ask yourself the same question the brand manager at Nike, Coke, Pepsi, or the Body Shop asked themselves. What is it that my product or service does that makes it different? We are CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. Create a message and a strategy to promote the brand called you. And I really think, you know, thinking about when you wrote this back in 1997, it's so powerful today because the landscape is so different. When you think about social media and the brand that is out there really 24/7 and constantly moving, this idea is that personal branding is really a way of clarifying and communicating what makes you different, right? With our resume, we only have usually 2 sheets to show what makes us different, as opposed to social media where there are thousands of ways to have your unique values and value add put out to the public. So you want to use those guides to really, or those ideas to really guide your career about decisions. So it's about really understanding what unique attributes you bring to the table. Your strengths, your values, those passions, again, that we talked about, And then think about them at even a higher level so that you really can come to the conclusion of what separates you from your competitors or your other peers. The idea is that personal branding really is something that needs to be clearly communicated on a regular basis. And I can say with deep conviction, always checking what you have out there, especially LinkedIn. That's a tool that most people use in the business world now. Really check out what's on there for your personal branding. That states a lot about each and every one of us, and also keeping it up to date. If it's stagnant and you're wanting to develop your career, most likely that could be actually something that keeps us held back. So why is this branding stuff so important on the job search? So the idea is that it really does help you understand your value and what return on investment you can give not only to your company but to yourself. The branding process, it also helps us clearly communicate our value. It helps us stand above our competitors, as I mentioned. And again, there's a lot of places to do that, your resume, all of your online profiles. And then also the last one, I love the last one because it does generate a chemistry for who you are. People engage in that chemistry, and they can get a sense of whether they would like to work with you or how you work, how you make things happen, and what you have to offer that actually nobody else has to offer. There was also something in that same article I mentioned from Forbes, this idea, the article continues and they talked about personal branding is a never-ending journey. It is making a full-time commitment of defining yourself as a leader. And I thought that was really great because I think that it is very true that it is a never-ending journey. It's something that we want to continue working on every day. So I'm going to finish up here with this idea of building a plan for success. And also, I will actually send a brand worksheet out to all of you so that you can continue that process after this session is over. This idea of building a plan is very important. The whole idea of building a strategy is really important around career development. And if I could just ask for one more hand raise of how many people set a weekly strategy for career development. Okay, getting a few. Okay. Well, I will invite you to start to think about how you can set up your strategy for a weekly development practice for career development. And like I had said in the beginning, it really is hard work to develop this. And the idea is that in our competitive market today, you really need to be focused and need to know what you want, what you have to offer, and where to search for it. It really makes the process a lot easier as you go through and plan for having some kind of successful targets to reach every day, every week, every month. So this really documents different things, this particular slide about career search. Other things to keep in mind as you're going through this, whether it's search or development, is to focus and define what you want. And then also make sure that you're taking some action at all times. Again, if you have a strategy that you're looking at and then following up on what you're supposed to be doing, that's the other piece. Once you have action in place, I invite you to take a minute to really create and track your activities and progress. I can't tell you how many times people have set out great plans, they work their plans, but they never go back to follow up, and they end up missing so many opportunities. So whether you put it on a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, everything you do around career development, I invite you to document and then check in on it on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis to make sure that you can see if what you're doing is really moving you forward. Because again, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? One thing that I will remind all of you too is that the Lake Forest website has career beams, and there's great tools on career beam to use for career development. And so I'd like to leave you with the idea about this whole process is really about career satisfaction. Career developing, as I mentioned way back when we first started, is this idea of creating a great and excellent quality of life. So your quality of life is enhanced by your job and career. If we're happy in our career, most likely we're happy at home, or it's a little easier to be happy and not taking some baggage home with us if we're not in a happy place at our career. I invite you to reevaluate yourself and your career path on a continual basis, as I've mentioned, And then really look for a series of alternatives and career options that really fit your life stage, going back to the model that we talked about before. So the idea is to look at how you want to create your career, to develop it on a regular basis, to really then be able to say that you truly have some great quality of life and career satisfaction. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions that anyone might have.
And if you have a question, you could please chat it into the chat box. And when you do, make sure you select all panelists to send the question to, so that way we'll be able to see your question.
And actually, while we're doing that, we'll just do a review while questions are coming in. We looked at the developmental self-concept theory. And again, I had brought that up because I believe it's important to look at our whole life in the realm of our career, not just to look at it as a job. We talked about the role of self-assessment, and again, equating it to the idea that you wouldn't start running or doing some physical exercise without having a physical. So same thing, self-assess, get mentally strong, build some career satisfaction, set those career goals. One of the important keys in that career goal setting is to write them down. The other one that I think is really important is to share with other people. And then understand that whole search process and challenge yourself and commit necessarily, and make a commitment that's necessary to exercise all of your career options, because there's so many of them out there. And then really build your plan for success. Build a strategy every day and every week and month and year so that you can continue to be successful.
Okay, Deborah, we do have a couple questions. There's one from Cheryl. She asks, known versus delivery, is one more important than the other?
And I'm sorry, what was the first part of that question, Carol?
Known for versus delivery. Is there one aspect that's more important than the other to emphasize as you're moving forward with your career development?
And, you know, I have to say, I'm not sure what she's asking. Known for, I'm not exactly sure what that question's asking.
Yeah, so Cheryl, if you want to chat in a little bit of a clarification, maybe we could go ahead and address that. There's another question here from Jody. I'm just going to read that to you. She says, I value teams in the workplace and value high competition externally. I think that positively affects the culture in the workplace. What would be the best way to communicate that? LinkedIn, resume, both? And what are your thoughts about this?
Absolutely. LinkedIn for sure, because you can do all kinds of things on LinkedIn today with videos, and also things like blogging are another great way to reiterate that as well. A lot of people who want to show what they are, what they really value in a workplace will do some blogging about that. And the resume, yes, you could do some things on your resume, but again, a resume is a stagnant tool where, you know, once you have it, it's kind of there on a piece of paper. Now, there are video resumes out there now as well, but I definitely think that LinkedIn is a great tool to use, and most recruiters and hiring managers are going there to look at people before they do some hiring and promoting as well within organizations.
And we got a clarification from Cheryl. She says, you said, look at what you are known for or how people see you, or what you deliver when asking to produce something. Is that
okay, I got it. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. It's both, right? You know, if what you're known for is not in conjuncture with what you're delivering, there's some disconnect there. So it's important to have those really be aligned with, you know, if you ask people that, and that's a great thing to ask, you know, what are you known for when you're trying to really put together your whole profile, and you're getting different, you know, a lot of different things. There's no theme. You're not finding a theme. Then that's something to really take a look at and start to think, well, what do I need to do? What am I putting out there that's not really consistent? Because the idea, especially around the branding piece, right, is to be really consistent. So if you're getting a lot of conflicting answers, you want to try to figure out what is it, where's the conflict and where's the disconnect, and then bring them together so that they are consistent.
Great. I think we have time for one more question if you're up for it.
Sure.
The question is, why are values so important? How do I take this exercise to actionable steps?
Great question. Thank you for that question. And the reason they're so important is because I as I had mentioned earlier, I cannot tell you how many people I work with and they come to me and say, you know, I'm really miserable in my job. And so we start to talk and I start to ask them about, well, what do they value? And like my example I had given of that, you know, someone who really values family and they might have small children at home, they can't ever get home. You know, they're working 70 hours a week or 80, 90, whatever it is, and they're butting up against that on a constant basis. And there's obviously reality to money, and we have to think about the whole overall picture. So a lot of times we do what we have to do because of financial situations. What I found is there comes a time when if we're constantly butting up against those things that we truly don't value, we become miserable. And if we become miserable at work, we eventually become miserable at home. And it's a big vicious circle and cycle that starts to happen. So if we could look at, okay, what is it that I really value? And if I'm not getting it, say and I'll give you an example, the idea if I'm working 70 hours and there's no way to cut that back, but I love my job too. The idea is to start to do some brainstorming and call me, we could do that, you know, of, okay, well, where can I start to get more family time? What does it really look like? So you don't have to necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's really, how do I do this? What do I, you know, start building a new strategy and change habits and start to grow? So I hope that makes sense. The idea is that if we're constantly butting up against things that we really don't believe in and we don't feel right about, it takes a toll on us.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Deborah, and thank you to all the participants who've joined us today. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. As I mentioned at the beginning, we hope you've gotten some good information out of this session. Today's program, as you know, was part of the Leadership Learning webinar series delivered to you by Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. And this program is an extension of our business management education, which is also a part of our Leader MBA program, iMBA virtual scenario-based program, and Corporate Learning Solutions. This program was made possible by our sponsor, the Trustmark Foundation. Also, we value your feedback on this session. You will be receiving a link to a survey later today. Please take the time to complete it. It'll only take a couple minutes. We will use the comments and information from these surveys to continually improve our sessions. Also included in that email will be the link to today's recorded session and the worksheets that Deborah talked about. This will all be in an email coming to you from Natalie Corrado. So with that, we'd like to end this session and wish you career health and fitness in 2015.